Good morning, Sunnyvale. We'll get started in just a few moments. Just pause for a moment for people to join in. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, just add them to the chat and I'll get to them if I can. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. Welcome to my virtual weekly office hours. This week's early mural is actually, it wasn't from New York. I came back from New York last week, but it was actually from San Francisco airport. So if you have been to SFO, I really enjoyed this mural. It's a mixture of, the black and white background and then the color of the butterfly. So definitely one of the more interesting murals I see, but from that standpoint, I like a lot of the murals. It adds a lot of the color to the community, and I think, that's one of the reasons why I've been working so hard to get, art spread throughout our city. So hopefully we can get more, and I'm working on that as I can. So let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week. This is the 124th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. So happy Friday. Welcome to the end of July. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. I know a lot of people that have been exposed to COVID and have been testing positive for COVID. I was able to make it to New York City last week and back, and was happy that I didn't come down with COVID. I tried to be as safe as possible. With that being said, there are a lot of people unmasked. I was shocked about to be on the subway, and 1 in 20, if we're lucky, we're actually wearing masks. So, but if hopefully you're doing well, and there's lots of more treatments now. If you do test positive for COVID, we've now reached 865 days since the March 16, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. Over 2 years ago, I converted my weekly coffee shop hours into this weekly live stream address and haven't missed a week since. People still say they enjoy hearing from their mayor each week, whether or not they're watching this video live or they're watching it time delayed by a few days or sometimes even a few weeks. These weekly addresses are good for me because it allows me to take stock over the last few weeks, but also it allows me a chance to provide you some updates, some news, answer some of your questions, give some general words of encouragement. So thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. Most Fridays, like today, I'll be also following up this live stream session with an in-person meeting at Being Seen on Murphy Avenue. So if you want to reserve 15 minutes or 30 minutes, just email me and we can figure out a time slot. We can also, if you want just to stop in for a few minutes, you can always stop in, and usually between my scheduled time slots, people often come in and for a quick question or just a quick comment. So happy to meet with residents. I've been doing it for almost, almost 6 years now, since I first got on council. And I do think it's a great way to talk to people, to figure out what their issues are, and continue that effort of making sure that you're a council member that's listening to the community. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, nationally, the new nationwide crisis support phone number became available. And so, you now have the possibility of dialing 988 to access emotional support whenever you need it. And, I'm happy that the service has finally gone live. It's open 24/7. And, with so many issues over the last year, and especially the last 2 years under COVID, of people feeling depressed and people feeling, really worn down by not having social contact with others. I'm happy that there's now a national number that people can call to access emotional support whenever they need it. So definitely, pass the word as far as that's concerned. And then last week, I spent the first part of the week in New York City. I was excited to, be chosen as one of the 40 mayors from all around the world to be part of Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. And so every year for the last 5 years, and so this was the 6th class, they've been choosing a handful of mayors from around the country, around the world. This year's class, there were 28 mayors from around the US. From California, we had Sacramento, Sunnyvale, Compton, and San Diego. But around the US, 28, and around the world, another 12. So going as far as, Monterrey, New Mexico, to, Gambia, Sarajevo, Glasgow, Helsinki. It was actually very, very interesting to share and collaborate with mayors with differing issues and differing solutions, and it was good to get that perspective of what the challenges are in your different communities. So I think it's a great honor for me and for the city. It also conceivably puts us in direct contact with additional resources that can really make a difference in the city. And so happy to kick off that effort last week, and more will be coming as the year rolls out. Last Tuesday night, county vector control sprayed around Sunnyvale and Santa Clara. So this is the second time this year that they've sprayed, and this time it was centered at Reed Avenue and Wolf Road. But this was expanded over the spraying that happened a week before, and kind of moved the centralized location. It covered, a lot farther west, went as far as Matilda Avenue, actually past Matilda onto Pastoria. Farther east, it went farther into Santa Clara. And then as far as north and south, south was now as far as Peterson Elementary, and north was still about Maud Avenue and Stewart Avenue. So, hopefully this makes sure that we have fewer mosquitoes, and that conceivably reduces the overall risk of West Nile virus in our community. Last Thursday, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission met to talk about the Caltrain grade separation. And the city has been collecting feedback on the grade separations for Mary and Sunnyvale Avenue for a while now. We've been, over the years while I was on council, we reduced multiple different designs to two designs two for Mary and two for Sunnyvale. And ultimately, those two designs, we got feedback. At least, the BPAC actually made recommendations on one of those. That was Sunnyvale, the Sunnyvale crossing, because they ultimately didn't have a quorum for the Mary crossing. Because the FPPC, if you own land, if you rent, in the property value, or conceivably your rent might be affected by a decision that you're making or a recommendation that you're making, you actually need to recuse yourself from the commission or council, depending on what the case is. And because of that, BPAC actually didn't have a quorum to talk about the Mary crossing, but they were able to talk about the Sunnyvale Avenue crossing. And so they recommended to council to actually have a pedestrian and bike undercrossing at Sunnyvale. And then the decision, they postponed the meeting to discuss about Mary, and that meeting will actually happen this Monday night. So if you want to join into that discussion, you can join that discussion this coming Monday. And then there's that will actually come to City Council at the end of August, on August 30th, if you want to talk there. And there's actually an online survey right now that closes this Sunday, so July 31st. So if you take a look at my media feed, you can actually see the where to comment on that survey of what you would like to see for those two intersections. And then on Tuesday, this week, council met and we reviewed the ballot measure language for the property transfer tax that conceivably would go on the November ballot. Of course, there was a problem that we only had 6 council members. So Vice Mayor Cisneros was absent. And so the remaining council members were pretty much split on the issue. We did several 3-3 votes. And so we couldn't finalize the wording. We couldn't, several council members didn't think that we should actually have a property transfer tax. I was on the side that we should. The property transfer tax has been, and so that right now there's $1.10 per every $1,000 of sales tax that goes for any property that's transferred in the city, and 55 cents of that goes to Sunnyvale, 55 cents of that goes to the county. Other cities, Mountain View, Palo Alto, San Jose, have had, Palo Alto and Mountain View, I think, have had it for, 10, 15, 20 years. San Jose implemented a few years ago. And what we were looking at was doing $7.50 property tax for every $1,000. And it was only for those properties that were valued over $4 million. So it was mainly focused around commercial properties and larger residential properties. We had some commercial real estate agents come out and speak against it. Initially, residents were against it, and the initial polling was based upon a $3 million floor. But if we raised it to $4 million, definitely that would only affect, like 2% of the home sales, of the residential sales within Sunnyvale. So it would have been very, very small numbers at the end of the day. It would have been duplex sites and, conceivably quadplexes. But ultimately, we couldn't come to a conclusion. And because the November ballot cutoff is at least the wording for the ballot measure, as well as the pro and con arguments, that's coming up very rapidly at the beginning of August. I think August 9th is the big cutoff date, or August 11th. But either way, we weren't going to be able to make that date. And so right now we're going to be shelving that item for a little while. But it was difficult, from my standpoint. An additional, and it's an estimated $6 million. It might be more, on a given year if one of the mobile home park communities ends up being sold, that might bring in a lot more money. And so for all the commercial property that's transferred within the city, it would actually add to the city's coffers to a large degree. And so I was sorry that we weren't able to bring in an additional $6 million. And I do think, the good thing about from a polling standpoint, people felt that, Sunnyvale is a very well-run city. It's a very safe city. That being said, there are issues that people would like to the city to focus on. And a lot of those are unfunded issues that the $6 million would have made a very big difference. So I was a little disappointed that we couldn't get this across the goal line. If you take a look at, some of the unhoused issues within our community, some of the like the liquid amber tree replacement program. And, there's lots of small programs that $6 million could have easily helped ameliorate. And so, I am a little disappointed, but, there's always a later date. We can always bring that back at a future time. And then council also decided that evening to amend the Sunnyvale Municipal Code to change the appointment process to fill vacancies on city council. So we went through this process earlier this year, and ultimately we found out that there were a few problems with that, one of which was ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting works conceivably if you have, a few candidates and lots of people voting. If you only have, 6 people voting and you have a lot of candidates, ranked choice voting doesn't work out too well. And so that was one of the issues that we needed to resolve. We also added a few provisions, especially, applicants, if we have to do an appointment, actually have to get signatures. Getting 20 signatures from city residents is a barrier, and at least it forces, potential candidates not to just show up, but it forces them to say, okay, I can at least find 20 people that think that I have enough qualifications to be on city council. So I think that's a nice barrier to add. And then we added provisions about the impasse language. What happens if, as in this case, we kept having a 3-3 tie while on city council. And so from that standpoint, it was good to kind of correct that process from a city standpoint. And then on Wednesday evening, we had the grand opening of Sunnyvale's newest park, Muwekma Park. That's at the old AMD campus. So Irvine ultimately had purchased that property from AMD when they moved their headquarters out. And, part of the negotiation with the developer was, okay, you're adding additional density, apartments and condos there. I think it's around 900 apartments and about 150, 120, somewhere in there, condos. And so part of that negotiation was actually to add a 6.5 acre park to that area. And, I'm really proud that what the final design looks fantastic. We kept all the redwoods that were in that area. We created new picnic areas, a big, multi-purpose field. There's exercise equipment. There's a small and large dog park there. There's ping pong tables and lots of playground equipment, and some of it's all access for kids and parents of all ages. But I really was happy that we're adding a park so close to San Miguel neighborhood. That's so there's a growing neighborhood as they're adding additional apartments and condos, and new condos have been added in that industrial area over the last few years. But it also supports, that historically kind of underserved community, San Miguel neighborhood. And so, it was good to see a lot of those residents who just walked over from their homes. And it was great to have, the Muwekma Ohlone tribal members there honoring us with a blessing. They said some words, but there was a blessing before the actual ribbon cutting. So it was good that they were overjoyed with us honoring them and honoring their tribe. And also, we had the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum there. They were there and they brought some tribal artifacts. and kind of help experience some history a little closer. So actually, if you haven't had a chance to visit the museum, the Heritage Park Museum, definitely get a chance to definitely go visit it. You know, it's open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays from noon until 4. So, and it's all volunteer. So definitely, if you haven't seen that, it's worth a trip. And then, you know, as far as that park, you know, it's part of our city's park master plan. And so that's, you know, that's our roadmap for investing $200 million to enhance every park in the city over the 20 years and open new parks. So this was, you know, the fourth park that we've opened in the last 8 years. So we've had Seven Seas Park, Sweeagles Park, Weiser Park, and now Muwekma Park. So happy to, you know, add additional open space into our community, and, you know, having a variety of parks or a variety of services that are being provided to those parks is just great for the city. And it's trying to make sure that wherever you live in the city, you have a park, hopefully within half a mile. And that's our long-term goal. Let's see, I think that's it for the week. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. You know, COVID numbers across the nation seem to be stabilizing. You know, the number of new cases reported has finally started to drop. You know, the number of deaths, there's still a good number of deaths, but hospitalizations are still kind of ticking up a little bit. There's a little bit of a delay, but in general, things are looking slightly better. You know, President Biden tested positive for COVID last week. He's, you know, between treatments and, you know, recovering, he's been recovering fairly well, and, you know, was speaking at several different, had several different discussions and speeches earlier this week. From a national standpoint, we've now passed, you know, 90 million cases. That increased by another 900,000 in the last week. You know, we've had over, at least from a vaccination standpoint, we've had over 223 million fully vaccinated, and 48% of those that are eligible for the booster have received the booster. And, you know, 83% of those 5 and older have had at least one dose. So we're getting the vaccines out, we're getting the boosters out to people. You know, 77% of adults are fully vaccinated across the nation. So, you know, 18 and older have been getting vaccinated. Deaths are still happening. You know, we're now at 1,023,000 deaths, another 2,000 in just the last week. And then as far as California, we passed 9.8 million positive cases. We've seen a surge, you know, and it's finally, that surge has finally dropped back down a little bit. You know, we're now having 17,000, almost 18,000 new cases a day, but that's down from 20,000 last week and 28,000 a day 2 weeks ago. So we're finally getting back to the mid 10,000, so 10,000, 16,000, 14,000 a few weeks ago before that. So it's dropping, that positivity case rate is dropping a little bit. We're at 15% case positivity over the last 8 weeks, down from 16% last week. And then California has had, you know, an additional 300 deaths related to COVID. So we're now at more than 92,000 deaths because of COVID. And then from a county standpoint, we've now had a cumulative case count of over 408,000 people that have tested positive with COVID-19. That's about 6,000 since last week. So it's pretty much the same as last week. We've had another 13 additional deaths. So we're at 2,368 deaths from a county standpoint. And you know, from a vaccination, our county is doing well. You know, more than 95% of those 18 and over are fully vaccinated, and 68.5% of those that are eligible for the booster have received it. So much better than the national average. You know, I continue to do lots of advocating on our city's behalf with county health, with the county supervisors. You know, at the county level, if you need to get tested, you can go to sccfreetest.org. There's also covidtest.gov, a national listing of all the places. And then if you need to get vaccinated, you can go to scfreevax.org or vaccines.gov to find out more information. Let me go ahead and talk about some upcoming events that are happening in our city. Today from noon until 2, there's the grand opening of Nature's Ice Cream on Washington Avenue. So it's the old La Planque wine bar along Washington, right near TAFE. So just basically east of Matilda Avenue. And they'll have their ribbon cutting at 12:30 p.m. So if you want to come join the celebration, drop by this afternoon for some ice cream. And then tomorrow from 2 until 6 p.m., Students for Society, and these are youth, they'll be holding a community-wide recycling drive at Homestead High School. So if you get a chance, they'll be collecting plastic bottles, aluminum cans, glass, books, cloth, other recyclable items. So definitely join that fund. Students for Society is an environmental organization basically spanning different schools around the Bay Area. And it's really led by youth that are really passionate to help out our environment. And so they do lots of different events, but happy to support their recycling drive as much as possible. And then on Sunday, from 1 to 6 p.m., Quarter Note Bar and Grill, and that's the nightclub bar that's right near Central Expressway and Lawrence Expressway. They're actually holding their 22nd annual benefit for canine search and rescue, and so I've been happy to join this for multiple years now. There's a barbecue, there's auction, there's live music, a car show, and especially you get to meet some of the canine search and rescue owners as well as the canine dogs. So if you get a chance, definitely drop by Sunday afternoon. It should be a lot of fun, and it's always good to support a good cause. This helps fund their efforts. Whenever there's issues in the county and person lost in the wilderness or whatever, this is what the canine search and rescue is for. It's all volunteers that basically train their dogs to help out from a county standpoint. And then next Tuesday is National Night Out. So this is an annual event that basically celebrates getting residents together to meet each other on a block by block basis. It's block parties that happen right at dusk. So lots of different places around the city. I think 11 different neighborhoods are having block party celebrations. And it's good to be back in person. We had a limited event last year, but a lot more people are planning this year. There are public safety council members will be coming by. So, public safety will bring fire trucks and canine officers and their motorcycle officers that the kids always love. And so I'll be joining, going around the city to the majority of locations. I can't get to all of them, within the 2 or 3 hours, but happy to visit those that I can. The biggest ones I think are normally Ortega Park, and Snail. Snail is probably one of the biggest in our city. The Snail neighborhood, just basically north of Maud Avenue, between kind of Maud and 101. They always have a great party, live music and all that. So, good to see people and be back in person. And then next Thursday, August 4th, is the due date for applications for our boards and commissions. And we have, recruitment underway for several positions, the Arts Commission, the Board of Building Code Appeals, and there are 2 positions open on the Heritage Preservation Commission. So definitely, if you get a chance, if you want to get back to the city, you can apply You can find more information on the Sunnyvale website, sunnyvale.ca.gov, and search for boards and commissions, or you can call the city clerk at 408-730-7483 and ask for an application. And then next Saturday, so a week from tomorrow, is Pizzella's Italian restaurant. It's their annual Hot August Nights, and that happens from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday. Lots of classic cards, food, drinks, music. It's usually a lot of fun. So definitely, if you get a chance, a week from tomorrow, that'll be happening on Pizzella's Italian restaurant at Pizzella's Italian restaurant on El Camino, right near Mary. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. And then as far as upcoming Sunnyvale Council meetings, August 9th, we'll be looking at approving modifying the recreation fee waiver program to deal with those modifications. We'll also be hearing an appeal of the Planning Commission decision on a project at the corner of Fremont and Sunnyvale, Saratoga. And then on Tuesday, August 16th, we'll be interviewing the people that applied for our boards and commissions, but we'll also be reviewing a project at the corner of Matilda and Olive. So it's to tear down 2 buildings and build a 125,000 square foot 4-story office building with 2 levels of underground parking right at that corner. So that's upcoming as far as council. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have a question, please just add it to the chat and we'll see if I can get to it. Viviana asked, where exactly is the new park located? So this is at the old AMD campus. It's right off of Duane. It's actually on Indian Wells Avenue. It's just east of Lawrence Expressway. So right in that corner, right in that area where Duane meets Lawrence Expressway. If you search for One AMD Place, One AMD Place is, what AMD's headquarters was for years, and definitely it's still on the map, even though AMD is no longer there. Zhang asked, can we reduce the content of minerals in our tap water? So the mineral content is evaluated on a weekly basis by staff. It meets all of the regulations. And we actually get our water from 2 different sources. So it's not like we directly control that mineral content and what what's the quality of that water, although we do monitor it continuously. But that is, we get that from the SFPUC, about 50%, and about the other 50% from Valley Water. So we get it from 2 different sources. Chris asked, where does the name Muwekma come from? And so this is actually what the Muwekma tribal members call themselves. And in Muwekma Ohlone, it means the people. So I thought that was a very appropriate thing. And definitely those tribal leaders thought it was a very good name for the park. There's lots of Ohlone parks, Ohlone College, but this was, I think, the first Muwekma park. So it was actually good from that standpoint. Joanna asked, what is going on across from Whole Foods? They closed the open space that was there. Yeah, so actually right across from Whole Foods is going to be an art corner. They're actually making it into kind of a mini park that has art. And so that was actually previously approved by the Art Commission, but it'll have, landscaping and artwork right there on the corner. And so they're working on that. That should be opening up, I think, what they said was October. So that's coming up relatively soon. David asked, why has the farmers market moved into the old Macy's parking lot? So for the rest of the year, they'll be actually pouring additional concrete along Washington Avenue. And in order for them to have enough quantity, they actually have to do a lot of that on Saturday. So the farmers market is only partially on Washington now, but it's also in the Macy's parking lot that City Line owns, the old Macy's parking lot. And so they basically made that available for residents and for the farmers to sell their wares. And that should happen through, I think, October, November of this year. Robbie asked, I noticed on the Sunnyvale webpage that the Lowlanders don't have a link for a neighborhood association. Do you know if this is because there isn't one or just because they don't have a website? Currently, there is no neighborhood association, although I know that there were several people that tried to start one a few years ago, and it's somewhat defunct. That was pre-COVID. If you want to get involved, if you want to help start that neighborhood association, definitely reach out to me and I can put you in touch with those other people that were trying to get a neighborhood associations installed at Lowlanders. Joanna asked, where can I report water waste? So Valley Water has, water waste inspectors that respond to any reports of water waste in the county. And so to make sure that people are following the appropriate local water restrictions. So what you need to do, what you can do if you want to report water waste is you can download the Valley Water app. So, access Valley Water, and there's ways of reporting through that. You can go to their website, valleywater.org, and there's a place on the website to say, conserve water and save with rebates, but there's a water waste section as far as that's concerned. Or you can just call them at 408-630-2000 or email them at waterwise, WISE, at valleywater.org. Let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions this morning. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. These continue to be uncertain times. Lots of people are still getting COVID, and there's continued stress and concern in our community. But I want you to know that no matter what challenges we face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and how our residents continue to respond to whatever challenges we face, especially over the last few years. I'm really thankful to everyone who helps out in the community, showing their kindness, generosity, their empathy, sharing what they have. Your actions really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening, and have a fantastic week. Take care. Goodbye.